In a dark, rain-soaked forest, Elian wandered, feeling lost and rejected after being turned away by his master. As he stumbled upon an ancient dagger hidden beneath the roots of an old tree, a wave of energy washed over him, awakening powers he never knew he had. Grasping the dagger filled him with awe and fear, as visions of flames and healing flooded his mind. Returning home, Elian wondered if this new power could change how others saw him and fill the loneliness in his heart. The rain fell in heavy sheets, transforming the forest into a shadowy labyrinth. Elian wandered deeper into the gloom, his heart heavy with rejection. Just days ago, he had stood proudly before his master, hoping to prove himself. But now, those hopes lay shattered, crushed by the words of a man he had looked up to. "You are not ready," his master had said, leaving Elian feeling small and unworthy. As he stumbled through the underbrush, a sense of aimlessness consumed him. He felt like a leaf tossed by the wind, lost and without direction. With every step, the weight of loneliness pressed harder on his chest. "Why can't anyone see me for who I am?" he muttered to himself, kicking at a stone that lay in his path. The stone skittered away, as if trying to escape the darkness of the forest, just like Elian wished to. Then, something caught his eye. A glimmer of metal peeked out from beneath the tangled roots of an ancient tree. Curious, Elian knelt down, brushing away the damp leaves and mud. His fingers grazed the cool surface of an ornate dagger, its blade gleaming even in the dim light. "What is this?" he whispered, a mix of fear and excitement racing through him. As he gripped the hilt, a surge of energy shot through him, electrifying every nerve ending. He gasped, feeling something awaken deep within. Suddenly, images flooded his mind. Flames dancing in a dark void, earth shifting and morphing under his command, and a warm light that soothed pain and healed wounds. "What is happening?" he thought, both terrified and exhilarated. He had always dreamed of magic, but this was something altogether different, overwhelming and intoxicating. Elian stood up, clutching the dagger tightly. The forest around him seemed to pulse with life, as if responding to the power coursing through him. He envisioned himself wielding this newfound magic, commanding respect and admiration from those who had dismissed him. Could this change everything? He pondered, his heart racing with hope. But as the visions faded, doubt crept in. What was the cost of this power? Would it truly fill the void in his heart that loneliness had carved? The thought lingered in his mind as he made his way back home. The rain continued to fall, but within him, a fire ignited, burning away the darkness that had held him captive for so long. When he arrived at his small dwelling, the familiar walls felt suffocating. He set the dagger down on the table, staring at it as if it might reveal the answers he sought. "What will you bring me?" he asked quietly, almost as if it could respond. "Will you make me strong, or will you lead me down a path I cannot return from?" Outside, the storm raged on, but Elian felt a flicker of determination. He wanted to be seen, to be valued, not just for who he might become, but for who he truly was. If this dagger held the key to that, he would use it. But what if that key opened a door he could not control? The questions swirled in his mind like the rain outside, each one more troubling than the last. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "I will figure this out," he told himself, though uncertainty clawed at his insides. He wanted to believe he could harness this power, that it could be a force for good. Yet, as he glanced back at the dagger, a shiver ran down his spine. What if I become what I fear? The thought echoed ominously, but Elian felt a spark of hope ignite within him. Perhaps this was the beginning of a journey, one that might finally lead him to the acceptance he so desperately craved. As night fell, he sat in silence, the dagger gleaming softly in the darkness, whispering promises of strength and significance. Would he embrace the path ahead, Or would the allure of power consume him? Only time would tell, but one thing was clear. Elian's life would never be the same again. As days passed, Elian found himself drawn to the dagger he had unearthed. Each time he held it, he felt a surge of power coursing through his veins. It was intoxicating. He began to experiment in secret, testing the limits of his newfound abilities. The forest became his sanctuary, a place where he could embrace the thrill of his potential without the judgment of others. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, Elian stood before a small clearing. He raised the dagger high, feeling its energy pulse beneath his fingers. "I am more than just a boy rejected by his master," he whispered to himself, a grin spreading across his face. "I am powerful." With a flick of his wrist, he summoned a gust of wind that swirled around him. Leaves danced in the air, and the sound felt like laughter. "Look at me," he shouted, his voice echoing through the trees. "I can do anything." But the thrill quickly turned to recklessness. Elian started to lose sight of the consequences of his actions. He would often find himself using his abilities to frighten those who had once mocked him. One afternoon, he confronted a group of village boys who had laughed at him for being an apprentice. They were gathered near the edge of the forest, tossing stones at a tree. Elian stepped forward, the dagger gleaming in his hand. "What do you want, Elian?" One of the boys sneered, crossing his arms. "I want you to remember who you mocked," Elian said, his voice low and dangerous. He raised the dagger, and a crackle of energy surged around him. The boy's laughter faded, replaced by fear. "Stop! You don't have to do this," another boy stammered, stepping back. Elian felt a rush of satisfaction as he watched their faces pale. "You think you can laugh at me? Look at me now," he shouted, letting the power swell within him. The ground trembled slightly as he used his ability to manipulate the earth, creating a small crack that snaked toward them. "Please, we're sorry," they cried, panic rising in their voices. But just as quickly as the thrill came, it faded. In the silence that followed, Elian felt a twinge of guilt. Did he really want to inspire fear? Was this the path he had dreamed of? As he walked away, memories of his childhood flooded back. He remembered the nights spent dreaming of becoming a great mage, respected and admired. What happened to those dreams? He muttered to himself, the dagger feeling heavy in his hand. Days turned into weeks, and the thrill of power began to twist into something darker. Elian found himself seeking revenge more than respect. He recalled the faces of those who had belittled him, and the anger inside him grew. "They will pay for what they did," he vowed one evening, staring at his reflection in a pond. "I will make them see me." But beneath the anger, guilt gnawed at him. Each act of revenge left him feeling emptier. "What am I doing?" he whispered one night, clutching the dagger tightly. "This isn't who I am." Yet, the power was addictive. Each time he used it, he felt invincible, like nothing could touch him. But with that feeling came a darker realization. The more he embraced the power, the more he pushed away the few who still cared. One day, as he sat alone in the forest, he heard a voice. "Elian, is that you?" It was a soft, gentle voice that cut through his thoughts. He turned to see a girl standing at the edge of the clearing. "What do you want?" he snapped, not wanting to be disturbed. "I just wanted to see if you were all right," she replied, her eyes filled with concern. "You've been distant lately." "Stay out of my business, Lyra," he said sharply, but her gaze did not waver. "Don't you see? This power is changing you, Elian. You're not the boy I once knew." Her words struck a chord within him. For a moment, he felt the weight of her concern, but he quickly brushed it aside. "I don't need you or anyone else," he retorted, turning away. As Lyra walked away, Elian couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness that lingered. He was powerful, but at what cost? The internal conflict brewed within him, a battle between his thirst for power and the remnants of his humanity. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Elian found himself wandering deeper into the woods. He had spent the last few days experimenting with his powers, feeling a mix of excitement and fear. The thrill of his newfound abilities kept him up at night, but the weight of loneliness hung heavily on his heart. One evening, while exploring a narrow path, he heard shouts and the sound of clashing metal. Curious, he crept closer, hiding behind a thick tree trunk. A group of thieves surrounded a young woman, her hands raised in defense. Elian's heart raced as he recognized her. It was Lyra, the healer he had seen in the nearby village. She was known for her kindness, always helping those in need. "Let her go!" Elian shouted, stepping into the clearing, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. The thieves turned, surprised to see him. "Oh look, it's the little mage," one of the thieves sneered. "What do you think you can do?" Elian felt the familiar surge of energy as he called upon the powers within him. Flames flickered at his fingertips, casting an orange glow on the ground. "I won't let you harm her," he declared, trying to sound brave. With a swift motion, he directed the flames toward the ground, creating a wall of fire between Lyra and the thieves. They recoiled, their eyes wide with fear. The leader of the bandits, a burly man with a scar across his cheek, grunted in anger. "You're just a child playing with fire. You think you can scare us?" But before Elian could respond, Lyra stepped forward. "Please, don't hurt them," she urged, her voice calm and soothing. "They don't need to be harmed." Elian turned to her, confusion written on his face. "But they attacked you. They are lost, just like you," she interrupted gently. "We can find a way to resolve this without violence." The thieves exchanged nervous glances, unsure of how to proceed. Elian felt a flicker of doubt. The power swirling inside him felt intoxicating, but Lyra's words struck a chord. "What do you propose?" he asked, lowering his flames slightly. Lyra smiled, her eyes shining with hope. "Let's talk to them. They might listen to reason." Elian hesitated, but nodded slowly. "Fine. I'll give it a try." He extinguished the flames, though the energy inside him still pulsed, urging him to take control. As Lyra approached the thieves, Elian followed closely, ready to intervene if necessary. "I know you're desperate," she began, her voice steady, "but violence will only lead to more pain. We can help each other." The leader crossed his arms, skepticism etched on his face. "How do we know you won't just turn us in?" "Because I believe everyone deserves a chance," Lyra replied, her gaze unwavering. "You can choose a different path. We can help you find work, a way to survive without stealing." Elian watched as the tension began to fade from the thieves' faces. They seemed to be considering her words. He felt a strange warmth growing in his chest, a feeling he had not experienced in a long time, a sense of connection. "Why should we trust you?" one of the younger thieves asked, his voice laced with uncertainty. "Because I was once lost too," Lyra said softly. "I have seen the darkness, and I chose to seek the light. You can do the same." Elian turned to Lyra, admiration welling up within him. Despite the danger she faced, she radiated kindness and strength. He felt a pull towards her, a desire to protect her and to be better. The leader of the thieves sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Fine, we'll listen, but if you betray us, you won't regret this," Lyra promised, her voice filled with sincerity. As the tension dissipated, Elian felt a strange sense of relief wash over him. Perhaps there was more to his powers than revenge and fear. Perhaps, with Lyra by his side, he could find a way to use his gifts for good. Later that night, as they sat by the fire, Elian and Lyra shared their stories. She spoke of her childhood, filled with laughter and compassion, while he revealed his struggles and isolation. "You have a choice, Elian," Lyra said softly. "You can choose to embrace the light or let the darkness consume you." Elian looked into her eyes, feeling the weight of her words. He was torn between the allure of power and the warmth of connection. But what if I lose it? The power. It makes me feel important. Lyra reached out, placing a hand on his. True strength comes from within, not from power. You don't have to be alone. As he gazed at her, he realized that perhaps the darkness he felt inside could be overcome. Maybe, just maybe, he could learn to trust again. Elian stood alone in the clearing, the dagger humming with power in his hand. The once comforting energy now felt different, almost suffocating. Shadows danced around him as darkness seeped deeper into his heart. Each day brought new abilities, but with them came an insatiable hunger for more. He could feel the rage and violence growing inside him, pushing him further away from the person he once was. One evening, Lyra found him practicing. She watched as Elian twisted the earth, creating jagged spikes that shot from the ground. Elian, please stop. This isn't you, she pleaded, stepping closer. Her voice was filled with concern, and her eyes searched his for a trace of the boy she had saved. Stay out of this, Lyra. I am stronger than I have ever been. I can't let anyone take this away from me, he snapped, anger mixing with fear. He could see the disappointment in her eyes, and it stung more than he wanted to admit. You're losing yourself. The dagger is changing you. You can feel it, can't you? Lyra took a breath, trying to calm the storm brewing between them. You're becoming a monster, Elian. I don't want to lose you to this darkness. Elian's heart raced. He clenched the dagger tighter, feeling its power pulse through him. This power is mine, Lyra. No one can take it from me. I am not afraid of it. His voice echoed through the trees, but deep down, doubt began to creep in. Was he truly stronger, or was he just hiding from his own fear? The days turned to weeks, and Elian's confrontations grew more violent. He sought out those who had mocked him, unleashing his fury with every encounter. The thrill of instilling fear was intoxicating. Yet, after each confrontation, he felt emptier. The guilt gnawed at him like a hungry wolf. Why do you keep doing this? Lyra asked one night as they sat by a fire. The warmth of the flames was a stark contrast to the coldness growing in Elian's heart. You're not a monster, Elian. You can choose a different path. He looked into the fire, the flames reflecting the turmoil within. What if this is the only way to make them see me, to make them respect me? Elian's voice was barely above a whisper. Respect built through fear is not respect at all. It is only a mask for your pain, Lyra replied, her voice gentle but firm. You have the power to heal, to be more than what they expect. Please, just think about it. But Elian could not shake the feeling that power was slipping through his fingers. The more he used the dagger, the more he felt its hold over him. He began to question if he was becoming the very monster he despised. Each time he wielded his powers, he felt a piece of his spirit fade away. One fateful evening, a shadow fell over the forest. The air grew heavy, and Elian sensed it before he saw it. A figure emerged from the darkness, his master's old enemy, a dark sorcerer who had come seeking the dagger. Ah, Elian, the sorcerer sneered, his voice dripping with malice. I see you have embraced the darkness. Hand me the dagger, and together we can rule this land. Elian's heart raced, a mix of fear and anger coursing through him. I will never give it to you, he shouted, stepping forward, the dagger raised high. You will not take it from me! The sorcerer laughed, a chilling sound that sent shivers down Elian's spine. You are too far gone, boy. You think you control the dagger, but it controls you. You are lost in its grasp. As the sorcerer advanced, Elian felt the weight of his choices bearing down on him. The darkness that had once seemed so alluring now felt like a chain, binding him to a destiny he did not want. No, he whispered to himself, I will not become like you. Lyra's voice echoed in his mind, reminding him of the strength that lay within. He had to choose, Would he let the dagger consume him, or could he find a way back to the light? The confrontation loomed, and Elian knew he had to confront not only the sorcerer, but the darkness within himself. The sky darkened over Valdoria as the clouds gathered, mirroring Elian's troubled heart. He stood at the edge of a clearing, the ancient dagger clutched tightly in his hand. The air crackled with tension as the sorcerer approached, his silhouette sharp against the backdrop of the stormy sky. Elian could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, a choice looming before him. "Do you really think you can stand against me, boy?" The sorcerer sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "That dagger belongs to me. I will reclaim what is rightfully mine." Elian's grip tightened on the hilt of the dagger. He felt its power thrumming beneath his skin, but as he glanced to the side, he saw Lyra standing there, her face a mix of worry and determination. She stepped forward, her eyes locked onto his. "Elian, listen to me," Lyra urged, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "You can't rely on the dagger alone. It wants to consume you. You have more strength within you than you realize." Her words struck a chord deep within him. Memories of their conversations flooded his mind. He remembered the way she had looked at him, not with fear, but with hope. The realization that he was not alone began to break through his confusion. I don't know if I can do this," Elian confessed, his voice trembling. "The dagger gives me power, but it also feels like a chain." Lyra stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You have to choose, Elian. Power can be a burden, but love and friendship can lift you up. Trust in yourself, not the dagger." In that moment, Elian felt a flicker of clarity. He turned to face the sorcerer, ready to confront the darkness that had plagued him for so long. "I will not let you take this power from me. It is mine to wield, but I will not be a servant to it." The sorcerer laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the clearing. "Foolish boy, you think you can defy me? You are still just a child playing with toys." With a roar, the sorcerer unleashed a wave of dark energy, the air crackling with malice. Elian felt the heat of the blast as it surged toward him. In a heartbeat, he recalled Lyra's words and took a deep breath. Instead of drawing on the dagger's power, he focused on the warmth of Lyra's hand, still resting on his shoulder. He felt strength rise within him, a strength that came from a place of love and connection. "Together!" he shouted, and Lyra nodded in agreement, her resolve shining through the fear. They stood side by side, ready to face the storm. As the dark energy collided with their combined force, Elian felt a surge of light erupt from within him. The ground shook as the two powers clashed, but this time, he was not alone. It was not just the dagger's magic he relied upon. It was the bond he had formed with Lyra. "Now, Elian!" Lyra shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Use your heart. Let go of the dagger." Elian hesitated for a moment, the dagger pulsing with an insistent energy. But as he looked into Lyra's eyes, he understood. The dagger was a tool, but it was not who he was. He took a deep breath and raised his hand, feeling the dagger's weight shift. With a final, decisive motion, he hurled the dagger into the depths of the forest. It soared through the air, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. The sorcerer's eyes widened in shock as the dagger struck the ground, shattering into countless shards of light. "No!" the sorcerer screamed, his power faltering as the darkness around him began to dissipate. Elian felt a rush of freedom wash over him, the chains of the dagger breaking apart with it. In that moment of sacrifice, Elian felt a profound sense of relief. He turned to Lyra, who was smiling through tears, her faith in him shining brighter than ever. "You did it, Elian. You chose the right path." Breathing heavily, Elian nodded. "I chose us." The storm began to clear, and the sun's rays broke through the clouds, illuminating the clearing and washing away the remnants of the battle. Together, They stood strong, ready to face whatever came next, united by the strength of their bond. With the dagger shattered, Elian stood in the clearing, the pieces of the once mighty weapon scattered around him like broken dreams. A heavy silence hung in the air, but it was different this time. There was no darkness pressing down on him. Instead, a lightness began to fill the void that the dagger had once occupied in his heart. As he took a deep breath, he felt the weight of guilt and anger lift. The memories of his violent outbursts faded, replaced by a sense of clarity. He turned to Lyra, who stood nearby, her eyes filled with concern and hope. "What now?" Elian asked, his voice trembling slightly. Lyra stepped closer, her expression softening. "Now we begin again, together." She reached out, her hand brushing against his arm. "You found strength in the dagger, but you can find true strength in who you are." Elian looked down, reflecting on her words. "I was so lost. I thought power would fill the emptiness inside me, but it only deepened it." He paused, searching for the right words. "I don't want to be that person anymore." Lyra smiled gently, her warmth wrapping around him. "You've taken the first step. It takes courage to let go of what you thought you needed." He nodded, feeling a flicker of hope reignite within him. "I want to help others, to show them that they don't need to fear what I became." "Then let's do it," Lyra said, her eyes sparkling with determination. "Valdoria has lost so much magic and connection. We can lead a movement to restore what was forgotten." As they spoke, Elian felt a surge of purpose. The darkness that once consumed him began to fade, replaced by the light of a new path. "But how do we start?" he asked, uncertainty creeping back in. "We start by reaching out to the people," Lyra replied. "We share our story. We show them that even in our darkest moments, there is a way back to the light." Days turned into weeks as Elian and Lyra traveled through Valdoria, visiting villages and towns. They spoke openly about their struggles, their mistakes, and the lessons learned from the dagger. They shared how power can corrupt, but also how choosing love and connection can lead to healing. One evening, while sitting around a campfire with a group of villagers, Elian spoke with passion. "I thought I needed power to be respected, but I learned that true respect comes from being honest and vulnerable." He looked around at the faces illuminated by the firelight. "We can all be stronger together. Let us not forget the magic we have within us." A young woman in the group raised her hand. "But how can we believe in magic again when it has been gone for so long?" Lyra chimed in, her voice steady. "Magic is not just about spells and power. It is about connection, kindness, and community. We can revive that magic by supporting one another." As weeks passed, Elian and Lyra began to see change. Villagers who had once feared magic started to gather, sharing their own stories and dreams. They formed bonds and began to rediscover the old practices of their ancestors. A sense of unity blossomed where once there was division. One day, while standing on a hill overlooking the village, Elian turned to Lyra. "Look how far we've come. I feel like I'm finally part of something bigger than myself." Lyra took his hand, her grip firm. "You are. And it's only the beginning. You have a legacy to create, Elian." Elian took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of her hand against his. "I want it to be a legacy of love and acceptance. A reminder that we can choose what is right, even when it's hard." As the sun set over the horizon, casting a golden glow on Valdoria, Elian knew that his journey was far from over, but he also understood that he was no longer alone. With Lyra by his side and a community rising around him, he felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. In that moment, he realized that true strength lies not in power, but in the connections formed, the love shared, and the courage to choose the right path. Elian smiled, knowing that his legacy would be one of hope, healing, and the enduring belief that even the darkest hearts can find their way back to the light. Share this story if you believe that love and connection can heal even the deepest wounds. Leave a comment about a moment when you discovered your own strength through vulnerability, and subscribe for more inspiring tales like this one.